We're celebrating 20 years of the Michigan Chronicle's Pancakes and Politics. 2 decades of tackling critical issues in business, politics, and the community. Welcome to today's event, produced with our partner WDIV Local 4 and Local 4 Plus. Please welcome our panel to discuss federal funding cuts. David Egner, the president and CEO of the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation. Nicole Sherrard Freeman, the president of the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan. Don Graves, the former deputy secretary of commerce for the Biden administration. Kelly Kuhn, the president and CEO of the Michigan Nonprofit Association. And Michael Pugh, the national CEO for the Local Initiative Support Corporation. Our moderator today is Dennis Archer Jr., chairman and CEO of 1642 Ventures. Today's conversation is brought to you by PNC Bank, Walker Miller Energy Services, DTE Energy, Rocket Companies, Delta Dental, and Business Leaders for Michigan. Now, here's Kathy Ned, president of Real Times Media News Group, to get the show started.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. And welcome to Pancakes and Politics Season 20, Forum 2. Today we're going to discuss navigating federal cuts. We have a lot to get to, so we're going to get right down to it. At this time, I would like to call up our title sponsor, PNC Bank. And speaking for PNC is Michael Bickers, Regional President of Detroit and Southeast Michigan. Mr. Bickers.
I still don't understand why they didn't let me go to hair and makeup before they did that photo, but that's okay. That's all right. Good morning, everybody. So this is going to take me less than 3 minutes. Is the video queued up too? Are we all set with that? We good? Okay. All right. So we have a couple of great guests and organizations as they come in with us today. And because I really have no speech thing, I did that last time, you guys know. So we donate the rest of our sessions usually to our nonprofit partners and young adults in education. And some may disagree, but I would tell you that the last couple months, I've been getting asked questions about how many people of color are on our executive team in Detroit or Pittsburgh, what have you. These days, that question is completely irrelevant. It just is. Because what we need are young adults that actually graduate in the top half, at least, of their class in high school and college, or else I can't find the executives anyway of color. So, who knows about Cass Tech? All right, that's right. Hey, Principal Phillips. So, Cass Tech, 2,500 students, 99% graduation rate, 98% college acceptance, $80 million in college scholarships. So I figured that in my first minute that I would have Cass Tech be our guest of PNC. Ms. Phillips, please stand, and our awesome students. Welcome, guys. Welcome. I'm so glad you guys have an appetite. I was up all night making that bacon. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. It is a pleasure. And we also have a wonderful nonprofit with us today. Where's Sierra? All right. David? Hey, David. You made it. All right. Detroit Horsepower. I have a short video, 1 minute. They're one of our nonprofit partners as well. And so I will tell you what they're about. Perseverance, empathy, responsible risk-taking, confidence, and self-control. Happens to be perks. Teaching young adults how to ride and care for horses in order to develop critical character skills. Can you two stand up, please, and say hello? And so here is a short video from Detroit Horsepower.
We talk about transformational projects a lot in Detroit. It's not often that we talk about them in the neighborhoods. This is one. This is going to change the trajectory of this whole section of Detroit. It's more than just a horse barn. It's more than just an equestrian center. This is going to be a hub in Hope Village. It's going to be a destination. We're doing this because it's not about a profit margin. It's not about just building something shiny. It's about helping the lives of young people. It's just going to be a springboard for a great life.
Tech. Thank you, Detroit Horsepower. Thanks so much.
Good morning. Thanks, Michael. I appreciate you and PNC Bank. Been a great partner for so many years. And all of our sponsors, welcome to the second session of Pancakes and Politics, our 20th year. Can you give yourselves a round of applause? I'm going to talk very briefly because we have an amazing panel. I know a lot of you call, you want to know what the next panel is, but this is why we typically do the panels 30 days out, because there is no subject that is more relevant than the one today. There are a lot of people, not only around Metro Detroit, but around the country, that are experiencing a little bit of uncertainty about funding and public policy. And so we want to have that conversation. Many of you, I typically don't look at the attendee list, but last night I had an opportunity to. We have a room full of nonprofit leaders, leaders in municipalities, and business executives that are funding their favorite programs as well. So this is really, really an important conversation, and I'm looking forward to having it. I want to thank again our platinum sponsors, DTE, Walker Miller Energy Services, PNC Bank, who did I forget? Rocket, definitely can't forget Rocket. And all of the sponsors. Most of you have been with us for 20 years. It's been an amazing ride. And I'm going to show a video from Rocket. We're in their house. They've been a great sponsor for 10 years. And then after the video, Mr. Dennis Archer Jr., our host, will bring up the panel. So enjoy the morning, enjoy the conversation, and we'll see you.
For 39 years, USnapBack has empowered residents on the east side of Detroit. We have a vision of quality housing for all, and the Gilbert Family Foundation is a critical partner. Their support has helped protect more than 10,000 Detroit families from losing their homes to tax foreclosure. Together, we're giving Detroiters the stability that they need to build a better future.
Hello, Mike. I guess this was my introduction, Hiram. Thank you. Good morning. Before I forget, Jamel has instructed me to share with you all that each of your tickets, the Chronicle is getting technologically advanced as we go. There's a QR code, and on the QR code, you can text your question. So, I know, wow, right? So good morning to everybody. As always, let me welcome all of the elected officials that are here. I saw County Executive Warren Evans. If there are any other elected officials, please stand and be recognized. I don't think Reverend Anthony has joined us yet, so we'll wait for him to come in as we normally do. This is a a very hot topic. It's very interesting because over the course of Pancakes and Politics, we've been honored to have governors and senators and mayors and significant CEOs from Gary Torgo to Dan Gilbert. And I cannot remember a single topic or panel that has illustrated so much interest prior to the panel. The number of calls that we have gotten regarding this topic has just been incredible, and the room is packed. And so I think that just speaks to the importance of the topic. So I want to get right into it first by introducing a phenomenal panel. I'll start with a dear friend, Nicole Sherrod Freeman. Nicole became president and CEO of the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan in January of 2025. Since its inception, you all may not know this, but they have distributed more than $1.4, come on up, Nicole, $1.4 billion through making more than 95,000 grants. And prior to her role at the foundation, she really filled almost every senior role within the mayor's administration at the city of Detroit and was largely responsible for a lot of the large-scale deals. Most notably, I think, responsible for the development management of the workforce program that contributed to tens of thousands of Detroiters getting very well-paid jobs through new opportunities in Detroit. So, Nicole, glad that you're here. Welcome. One thing, I don't know that you know this, but, well, you probably do know this now that you're CEO, but our family has our foundation with you, and you guys have been great partners, so thank you. Your dad about it. Oh, good. He didn't tell me. Thank you. David Egner is also no stranger to the philanthropic community. He serves as president and CEO of the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation. And for those of you who may not be familiar with how the foundation got started, the Wilson family resided here in Grosse Pointe, so they had a significant presence here in the state of Michigan, but were also the owners of the Buffalo Bills. And so their foundation is one where they have given David a time limit of the year 2035 to responsibly distribute their funds to worthy charities throughout the southeastern Michigan area as well as the Buffalo area. So, David, thank you for being here this morning. I want to go in order of how you're standing there, Kelly. So, Kelly, come on up. Kelly Kuhn is the president and CEO of the Michigan Nonprofit Association, which is a charitable organization dedicated to nonprofits in the communities they serve, of which we are obviously one. Interesting quote from Kelly. She says, "A solid and resourced nonprofit sector makes the world a better place, and my mission is to ensure all nonprofits have access to capital, human, and other resources they need to deliver their mission." So, Kelly, thank you for being here. My fellow banker, Michael Pugh, come on up. Michael became the CEO of LISC in October of 2023. He has more than 30 years of experience in financial services with a particular focus on expanding access to capital for under-resourced families, businesses, and communities. He spent more than a decade at Harlem-based Carver Federal Savings Bank. And for those of you who are not familiar with that institution, please look it up. They did phenomenal work for that community. Where he led the nation's largest publicly traded African-American operated bank that had then more than $720 million in assets. Michael, thanks for being here. And Don Graves is absolutely no stranger to the city of Detroit. You got all kind of people I've never seen at Pancakes and Politics that are here because Don Graves is here. So thank you for helping us fill the room. But Don served as the 19th Deputy Secretary of Commerce, where he was the Chief Operating Officer of the department, managing a workforce of nearly 50,000 colleagues and a budget of more than $160 billion. That's probably getting cut now. While Secretary, you served as the Economic Growth Coordinator for Puerto Rico, something near and dear to me, and oversaw the Obama administration's support of Detroit with more than $300 million in support. And so, Don, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to tell you all, first of all, I have been instructed to not make this political, and I'm going to try my hardest. But I'm not sure that I'm going to get an A+ on that today, Hiram. I'm forewarning you now. But it's interesting because when my lady Angie saw the flyer the first time, she said, you know, is this something that is for nonprofits only? And I said, and we didn't, even at the time, we weren't even planning to talk about necessarily tariffs, which I think overall economic policy has to be part of the discussion, coupled with the limitations on the funding. But if you look at it, I mean, there's really no sector of business that is not touched by this. Education, healthcare, automotive, which I'm involved with and know very well. I don't know, is Paul Reiser here? You know, I don't know if you know Paul Reiser. He's a nonprofit leader. He saw the initial flyer even before it was finalized, and he sent me a very impassioned text message, which I want to read because I think it's very important. And he said, it's a lot of fear, real world, bottom line hemorrhaging for small business owners, farmers, capital providers to underserved communities, researchers, etc., and many of the nonprofit entities that service and support them. The reality is that some won't make it through this. At the end of each day, we are all talking about human lives. So to me, that was very impactful and sums it up. For the nonprofit leaders up here, and I'll start with you, Nicole, but I'm asking each of you 3 questions, and then Michael and Don, I've got a little bit of twist for you. But Nicole, provide literally a 1-minute overview of what you do as an organization and how policy that's ever evolving now could affect your work.
Yeah, so appreciate the question. Good morning, all. Glad to be here as always. So we are a community foundation. Let's start with grounding ourselves in the difference between a community foundation and a private foundation. Quite simply, community foundations are money in and money out. Private foundations are money out. The money that comes in to community foundations comes from people like you, donors, and partners like Dave. So thousands of donors ranging from a couple $100 to tens of millions. We grant about $100 million a year through about 5,000 grants or so. Historically, that has been more of a peanut butter spread. We are focusing in now. In the interest of time, I won't share that, but I will share this. There are just shy of 900 community foundations across the country. There are 67 community foundations in the state of Michigan. There is a community foundation for every single county in the state. And our footprint represents 7. So we are 7 counties. So we serve donors as their charitable philanthropic partner, and we serve community-based organizations as grantors, and we serve as partners in convening tables around topics that need to be discussed.
Thank you. David, Wilson Foundation. What do you guys focus on, and what are the potential impacts to your work?
So we do have this 20-year spend-down mandate, so we're inside of a 10-year window. Mr. Wilson wanted the impact to be now, not 50 years from now, which is why he did that. We focus on 7 counties in Southeast Michigan, ironically the same counties that Nicole focuses on, so we can use the Community Foundation as a critical partner and intermediary for us, and 9 counties in Western New York. So think Niagara Falls, Rochester, Buffalo, and then the Southern Tier. Our focus is on quality of life. And to be more specific, economic development, caregivers, people who give care to older aging adults, which is a coming crisis as the birth rate drops and the age rate grows. We also work on education and workforce, and then work on parks, trails, green design, and how that fits into economic development. Youth sports and rec is another area where we spend a lot of time. We did $125 million of grant making last year between the 2 markets. And if I have a fear about what's happening right now, our biggest partner, particularly in Western New York, is the state of New York. So now you have federal dollars coming in mixed with state dollars, and the question for us becomes, What's the leverage point? What's the sustainability issue? How will this change our investment? I don't know the answer to that yet, Dennis.
Thank you. Kelly, you represent all these folks and others. So you are not concerned about a single organization. Well, obviously, you have fiduciary responsibility to your own, but you represent, in theory, all of these folks. Talk about your responsibility and what you do, and then how you see this affecting the nonprofit sector as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought, where do I start? So the Michigan Nonprofit Association, we ourselves are a 501c3 organization. We serve statewide. We have about 750 members who are dues-paying members to the association, but our reach is well over 17,000. In Michigan, there are 42,000, pretty close to 42,000 registered nonprofit organizations. These are your higher ed institutions, your medical systems, all the way down to your neighborhood organizations, including the one that was in the video that we just saw. So this is really a critical time for nonprofits. We are monitoring lots of impacts that are happening. You mentioned all of the ways that it is touching community by subsector, right? Economic development, and the list goes on, health and human services. At the association, policy and advocacy is one of the ways that we serve nonprofits. And we do that in a couple capacities. The first is helping to ensure that nonprofits have the tools and resources that they need to be successful. And in this moment, one of those things is exercising that muscle around advocacy. So our work at the association is not about uplifting our work that we do. It's about actually elevating the work of the sector. And so that's really important. And in this moment, telling the story of what is happening in community is absolutely critical, in addition to going out and advocating on behalf of their missions, and more importantly, the communities and individuals that they serve and impact, for sure, without a doubt. But related to policy for us, one of the things that we care deeply about is the tax-exempt status. So when we talk about our impact to nonprofits, we represent the entire sector in our work, because tax policy, often not like the most fun thing to talk about, honestly, but critically important right now in this moment. The tax-exempt status, the 501c3 tax-exempt status, that is what we are out front on right now, because it impacts community foundations, private foundations, business, government, but more specifically, it impacts nonprofits. And so we care deeply from a policy standpoint about making sure that we're elevating the important work that's coming out of communities all over Michigan.
Kelly, we're going to come back to you about the tax-exempt status. It's also interesting because this is one of these topics where you can't prepare 3 days ago to talk today. I was up this morning, CNN, Fox, trying to be up to speed on what's being said now about Harvard. And so I want to get back to that. It's very important. I don't know if any of you all have seen, and we're coming to Michael now, a movie on Apple TV called The Bankers, but it's based upon a true story about two brothers in the South who realized that they were being hindered because they didn't have the access to capital that white folks did. So they figured out a way to work around the system to legally buy a bank. And then when the white folks found out that brothers had a bank, then they used the government, and the FBI, and the others to shut the bank down. That was 1960s. This is 2025. Same stuff's happening today. Michael, you're passionate about access to finance for people of color and people in underserved communities. I sit on a publicly traded bank board I mentioned to you earlier. So I'm well aware of all the regulators that come in from the different agencies. Anybody who's got a mortgage knows there's a zillion documents you have to sign. A lot of that is because of the regulations to protect you as a consumer, and also to protect fair lending and make sure people aren't being abused. David, if you and I walk into a bank with the same blue suit on, you're going to get a better rate than I am, and you're going to get a business loan more times out of 10 than I am, just because of the color of our skin. And so this is, Michael, a large part of your charge. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what your organization does, because it does phenomenal work and people are not necessarily familiar with it, everyone in the room. But I also would like your opinion on, do you think that could they come after that next? do you feel like that there's a potential threat to the banking industry, the traditional banking industry, where someone could say, we don't need CRA anymore. We don't need Fair Lending Act anymore?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So we're jumping right in, right, this morning.
We only got an hour, brother. This is what we do.
So first, let me just say good morning to everyone, and what a pleasure it is to be here in my hometown, have this opportunity to be a part of this incredible conversation. So Local Initiative Support Corporation, LISC, is a national nonprofit community development financial institution, CDFI. CDFIs are designated by the U.S. Treasury, and part of their scope and remit is to make sure that they reinvest within communities in order to drive local economies. And specifically, these are communities that have historically been underserved in the sense of investments. So another way of saying that is underinvested. LISC, as a national nonprofit, focuses on three key things. The first one is housing. I'll talk a little bit about that, I'm sure, throughout this conversation. And it ranges from our direct lending to borrowers focused on affordable housing as a key component, up to and including being a HUD Section 4 provider and working with community-based partners. There's about 1,400 community-based partners across the country that we work with. Our second vertical is programs. So we have about 10 national programs, and each of the major cities that we're in 37 cities across this country. Shout out to our local, our LISC Detroit team that's here with me. Come on, give them a round of applause. Thank you. This group has done such amazing work for 35 years, more than $400 million invested in various programs, lending, health, safety, and justice, as well as supporting small businesses. So these 10 program verticals that we have, the thought for us as an organization is that if you support and provide housing, you have to provide the wraparound services for a healthy ecosystem in order to drive local economies. Otherwise, you've just placed housing in a desert. And then our third vertical that we have is investments, and what we call that strategic investments. We work with municipalities across the country to help raise capital focused on affordable housing. We may have some opportunity to talk a bit about that with the Detroit Housing Futures Fund here, where we've been able to work very closely with the city of Detroit, JP Morgan Chase, and Kresge as critical partners to be able to make significant investments leading up to approximately 1,000 homes, new homes, and the preservation of housing. And so the ability to have a trusted advisor that can work across with public and private sector to raise capital, and that capital then being used to ultimately deliver affordable housing. That's our third vertical and what's so important to us. The sense of having local leadership is also very important for us, because our local Detroit team is going to know so much more about what's needed here in the communities and how to drive that versus having it at a centralized level where there's someone that may not be connected to the communities. In this case, as you all heard me say, Detroit is my hometown, and so it's pretty special. Now, with regards to this important topic that you raised, so when we think about CRA, really there are three critical components to Community Reinvestment Act, right? There's lending, there's investments, and there's services. And so I think what we have to do, not just LISC, but everyone here in the room that is very interested in affordable housing, we have to play a critical role in advocacy, and especially advocating for community development financial institutions. CDFIs have historically been the conduit to help work again with public and private sector. Large financial institutions have often leveraged CDFIs to help drive local economies, because though our large financial institutions play a significant role in our GDP, they are not everywhere and times may not be interested in being in every community, every footprint, especially as you start to think about rural communities where there's a much smaller population. And so that's where CDFIs play a role, is helping to be able to be a source of support and partner with the larger financial institutions and, again, the public sector to have a broader reach. And as we think about CRA legislation, though I don't have a crystal ball, what I would say is that we have to really think about it from two lenses. One is to strongly advocate for CDFIs to continue to have an existence, because that question has been raised about what do they do, why are they important? And then I think the other thing is that though we may see some changes within CRA, we have to continue to talk about the importance of the investment aspect and the direct lending associated with CRA.
Thank you. Don, good morning, and Michael, welcome home. I should have said that.
Thank you.
Don, a couple things for you. The second is I got an interesting anecdote that actually involves Nicole. But after suggesting that Harvard lose its tax-exempt status and then freezing $2.2 billion in funding to that organization, who's thankfully has a 53 to 60, I can't remember the number, $1 billion endowment. I just need to quote this because it's kind of unbelievable. The president of our country posted, Harvard is a joke, teaches hate and stupidity, and should no longer receive federal funds. And I guess my question to you, because you're the closest to it, at least historically, is, what the hell is happening in D.C. right now? And is it possible that this is just like a 3 to 6 month thing, or do we expect this roller coaster ride for 4 years?
Well, Dennis, thank you and that question. And Hiram, I am so glad that you invited me to be part of this. I am very glad that we've had 90 days of the Harris-Walz administration. It's been phenomenal. No, it's the answer is no. This is not an aberration. This is not a blip. This is the new reality. We are undergoing a fundamental, not evolution, but revolution around the way that our government is it operates, as opposed to how it's supposed to operate. The old order, and I usually keep a paper card with me, but I made it digital. I have a card that I carry with me all the time that talks about what has made the United States the leader, economic leader in the world. What are the fundamentals that have allowed us to succeed? And I won't show you the card, but I'll tell you what's on it. It's a rules-based international order. It's one that protects human rights, worker rights, protects intellectual property, utilizes the best capital system in the world. It goes down a list of things that we do. We work closely with our partners and allies. We have systems within this country that protect and ensure the rights of people, our communities, and our organizations. And at the bottom of that card, it says predictability, transparency, and clarity. That entire card that described the system that we operated in for the last however many years you want to talk about, certainly the last 75 years, but I really think the entirety of the life of this country, that is being swept away. So when you think about what's happening in D.C., there is an attack on all of those institutions, the fundamental beliefs and norms that we all operated within, that is being undermined. So I think that the new reality, at least for the next 3.5 years, is more of this, that our economic system is going to be challenged, that our institutions, whether they be our legal systems, our systems of governance at the local, state, and federal level, our institutions of higher education, our every institution you can think of is being assailed. And I think part of the challenge is that there's a governing principle, and I'm not trying to be political here. The governing principle is one of chaos. That, people, whoever can get, there's no underlying philosophy or approach to the way that things are being operated in. Whoever can get to the president and has an idea that sounds right, that last idea is the one that the president goes and talks to the press about and tells folks across the administration to, whether or not that's right. So I think that for nonprofits, for the systems that we've operated in around capital access, the ability to conduct business with certainty, or at least some semblance of certainty. Business leaders like to have, they like to have 5, 10, 20 years of certainty, but at least, maybe 30, 60 days worth of certainty. That is out the window. So we have to start building new approaches, new systems, and getting our institutions that are in our communities to work together. One of my mission statement, my value statement is that people have hopes and they have dreams. And they want to turn those hopes and those dreams into lives of dignity. But what they need is that opportunity. And what the federal government did, working with all of you, working with in communities, was to provide that opportunity to turn those hopes and those dreams into lives of dignity. We can no longer assume that the federal government is going to be a partner in providing that opportunity that we all believed in for years and years. So it's a changed environment. It's not going to change, go back to the way it was. It may not ever go back to the way it was. The last thing that I'll say is it may also be an opportunity for us to think about a revolution in the way that we think about the old systems, the old frameworks, the old processes. Maybe those, if they're being swept away, why build them back the way that they were? Let's build them in a new way going forward.
Thank you. Don, I'm going to stick with you for a second, and I'm going to come back to you, Nicole. I think that for any of us that operate organizations or businesses are always looking for efficiency. So I think on the surface, the whole idea of a Department of Government Efficiency, which I believe already existed, he just renamed it something else. It does make sense to me personally on the surface. To me, it's how it's gone about and how it's being used now as a stick to try to whip people into submission. But it's an interesting story. So I had to take an Uber the other day, and the guy that picked me up, I talk to everyone that comes because you just learn something from everybody, and the guy that picked me up had then done a 6-year and a 4-year stint for dope in prison, got out, got into a workforce program, which he raved about, and then got a job at one of the Lear seating facilities that you brought to the city of Detroit. But because of the tariffs, is laid off and is now back struggling again. And so, the question in that regard with that anecdote, Don and Nicole, I ask you both the same thing. Is there a better way to encourage the reshoring of manufacturing other than these astronomical tariffs against many of our allies?
Yes. I take you back a long ways back, about 100 days ago. There were a number of efforts in place. There were 4 major pieces of legislation that the previous administration had passed. The American Rescue Plan, which got us back on track coming out of COVID. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the first time we've had major infrastructure legislation passed in nearly 100 years. The Chips and Science Act, an opportunity to invest in the type of production in this country that allowed us to take charge in critical and emerging technologies like semiconductors, like AI, like quantum computing, biotech, et cetera, and the Inflation Reduction Act, which doubled down on the similar sorts of things, so clean tech, et cetera. That's a way for us to bring manufacturing back in those areas that made sense for this country. I don't know why we would want low-value manufacturing in this country that barely keeps families afloat. Why would we want to bring that to our country? And so this new approach of tariffs, essentially to shut down our borders to try and force either investment from abroad into the U.S. or investment within the U.S. to build manufacturing, it's not going to create the well-paying jobs that we were talking about with the Chips and Science Act and Inflation Reduction Act. It's not going to create those workforce pathways to the lifelong skills that we all want for our kids and for our community members. So I think what is going to happen is that you're going to have some of this manufacturing, but it's not actually going to create many jobs, because you talked about actually no, it was Dave that talked about the challenge of our demographics. We are getting older, and we're putting out the folks that would actually take the jobs that many American citizens don't want to take. We're shutting down our borders. We're not letting it. That was one of the reasons that we had a strong economy coming out of the pandemic, was because we had a lot of people who were coming into the country who were taking the jobs that many Americans didn't want to take. So who's going to take these jobs? Well, they won't take those jobs, so they're going to be automated for the most part. A lot of the manufacturing that's coming back will be robotics. It'll be autonomous. It'll be run by AI. So what you're not going to see, I think, is the type of manufacturing that the president harkens back to, the day of when Detroit and Cleveland and Toledo and Youngstown had massive factories. That's not coming back. The manufacturing has come down from the 1930s in a steady progression to where it is today. It's 8%, I think, of our workforce, from where it was 40 or 50% of our workforce, something like that. It's not coming back. Instead, it's going to make things more expensive for Americans. It's going to raise inflation, and it's not going to create the types of jobs that we want. And it, in fact, is also forcing even our allies. I was talking to some of the ministers from other countries who said, "We love you, but we can't work with you right now. And so we're going to go and cut a deal with the Chinese because we don't know what we're going to get from the United States. So we'd rather work with them because at least they're more consistent with their policies."
Thank you. Nicole, you did a wonderful job at illustrating how just hard work and being driven on a single goal, creating jobs, bringing investment, bringing manufacturing to Detroit. You were able to do that prior to the new tariffs being the federal strategy. Do you think that there is, as Don does, are there alternative methods to get to this place as opposed to these drastic tariffs that have been put in place?
Yeah, so there's a lot here. So I want to take to your question, Dennis, your response, Don, and make it hyper-local. So what we were, as you're referencing, Dennis, what we were able to do in Detroit specifically, but in some surrounding counties as well, through the public systems. And so shout out to, all the folks in the room who run the public systems or ran the public systems, Terry Weems and Pamela Good. People didn't think. So when we got Lear and FCA and Amazon and Major Rail and, the list goes on.
Factory Zero.
Factory Zero. When we got those organizations, when we got those factories to build here and or expand here and or stay here, none of them thought that we had the workforce to do it. And we said to them, we can prove you wrong. Give us 60 days, give us 90 days, and we can prove you wrong. So while no one thought it was possible then, and while we don't have a lot of reason to believe it's possible now, we do have a track record that says if you give us in this region an impossible situation, we'll figure out how to solve it. I am too concerned, very concerned, that when manufacturing in some way is reshored or onshored, it will be in the form of some sort of automated solution. I don't know, though, that it is an all or nothing, right? I do believe that if you look at the supply chains then you have to start to break it down by sector. You have to break manufacturing down as a sector and not just think about autos, but all the other things that we rely on other economies for. And it is in that nuance that I think there might be some opportunity for a short-term solution that would help rebuild our regions, really our nation. Because our nation, this is a problem, right? Like our nation doesn't have the infrastructure to build things and build things well. It's why we couldn't bring the semiconductors back from Taiwan, because we don't know how to build that. We don't know how to do that. And we don't have the infrastructure to do things at scale anymore. And that's a broad, there are people in the room and probably on stage here to argue with that, but just sort of generally. I wouldn't have gone about it this way, Dennis, but this might be our moment. In fact, we have to make this our moment to figure out how to do some things at a smaller scale and then grow that as we try to rebuild our country's capacity, and let's just make it hyperlocal, Michigan's capacity to build things. During COVID, the autos and some of the auto suppliers swapped out their equipment that was making whatever parts they were making. They made hand sanitizer and other PPE equipment. We could figure that out again, and it won't be easy. But here's the risk that, and this is where this topic of
You're moving up in your seat. You're getting serious.
Yeah. I get a little ramped up about this. This is where this opportunity around economic development and tariffs and workforce and what we need to do to rebuild healthy communities, it's where all these things meet, right? Because all these things are woven together. If we view it as an all or nothing, either manufacturing comes back the way it was, and I agree, Don, it isn't. Who are we kidding? Or it's all automated and there's no work for anyone. Like those are two extremes. And I think extremes are, this is one of the dynamics that gets this country in trouble, right? That gets our region in trouble, that gets Southeast Michigan in trouble. It's these extremes. We have to take small opportunities to help folks rebuild their skills or build some skills at all. Because at the same time that this dynamic is happening, our education system isn't getting any better. And shout out to every teacher in the room, every principal in the room. God bless you for the work you do. But our education system isn't getting any better. So if we keep producing the product, the student, that we are producing now, and automation becomes more widely adopted, and we haven't figured out how to rebuild capacity for making small things or manufacturing things or operating things, if we haven't figured that out, then we have a disaster. But we might have 20 minutes left, Dennis, to figure this out.
Dennis, can I challenge your premise of efficiency?
Absolutely.
It's the wrong metric.
Okay.
It's absolutely the wrong metric. Government, by its nature, isn't efficient. Nonprofits aren't efficient. If we were efficient, we'd be called for-profits. We'd be trying to make money on this deal, right? Do you want efficient caregivers for your mother, or do you want effective caregivers for your mother? Effective education means those that have special needs get special need teaching. Efficient education means they don't, right? You're going to teach to the middle, only the middle. Efficient theater, that would be interesting. Is Reverend Anthony here? Because I don't want to say anything about efficient church.
He's late.
You know, I don't want to talk about efficient church because that would be, it's the wrong metric. Now, we don't want waste, and we want to be most effective with the resources we have, but it's a matter of defining what's the value of government, what's the value of nonprofits. And if we devolve to this one metric of efficiency, we've absolutely missed the boat, and we're giving away the American culture.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. I agree 100% that really in any business or enterprise, it should not be the only metric. I do agree, or I do believe, though, that and you mentioned not having waste. I do agree you can do better at utilizing the resources that you have. Is what, and so as you take money in, excuse me, as you take money in and you determine how to best use those funds, when you look at what the mission of your business or nonprofit is, there are some things that are wasteful and there are some things that need to be, you talked about having a parent in an old folks home. I mean, it's not adult living facility. You definitely would rather the money go towards your parents' comfort than you would having a flat screen in the office of the manager. Exactly. And so I agree with that 100%. But sticking on efficiency and as it relates to nonprofits, and Nicole, you were phenomenal, and you do know there's an open Senate seat next year. I think you'd be phenomenal. Right? Hiram will chair your campaign committee. Kelly, you brought up and I talked about it in my comments when quoting the president, but for you and your organization, but overlooking or supporting the organizations, and back to the two nonprofits up here also, talk about the effect. If you actually were to lose your nonprofit status, what would that just mean for your organization?
Yeah, it would be detrimental to communities all over Michigan, without a doubt. I mean, first and foremost, nonprofits are employers. So 1 in 10 jobs in Michigan, 10% of the workforce in Michigan is tied to the nonprofit sector. That's direct, right? Then you think about the indirect impacts. Some of the things that we're hearing when funding freezes up, and an urban program that focuses on environment and is going to plant a bunch of trees in the city, that contract for who is growing those trees is likely to be a rural farmer. So there's like direct impacts, and then there's indirect impacts with regard. And so I want to make sure 40% of nonprofits, that 42,000 number, 40% of those nonprofits reside in this 7-county region. They follow the population trends. I mean, they are touching every single issue. Name an issue, and I guarantee there's a nonprofit that is supporting that issue. So it would be really impactful. And while we know in Michigan, 93% of nonprofits in Michigan are C3s, are charitable organizations, they have budget sizes of $1 million or below. So these are small businesses by definition. Different tax structure, but small businesses. So when we think about the impact that could happen to a Harvard who has a 501c3 designation, that trickles all the way down. Because out of that 93% of nonprofits with $1 million below budgets, 50% are 50,000 and below. Again, small organizations, they rely on volunteers, they rely on their board members, they rely on the contributions of individuals. So the setup of how this works when freezes happen for federal funds, we were hearing from nonprofit leaders in those early days that they had to decide whether or not they would pay their bills or they would do payroll. If housing, for instance, if there are not housing vouchers that come to support low-income housing, those landlords, small business owners, do not get rent. Like the interconnectedness in this moment, I think cannot go without emphasizing. It's all connected. Nonprofit leaders have had agreements with government for decades that dollars would come in and support the programs that they're running, because nonprofits are filling gaps in community. 90% of some of nonprofits' budgets are tied to federal funds. That's it. They cannot recover. Our friends at the Dorothy A. Johnson Center for Philanthropy ran a study and said if you took all of the assets that every foundation, community, private, corporate, every foundation across the country, and took it and put it against a federal budget number, 79 days philanthropy could cover one federal budget. 79 days. Can't make up the difference. If the economy and the economic impacts happen to where now individuals who were once donors become recipients of services, can't expect individual contributions to also make up the difference. It's not going to happen. So we are deeply concerned about a Harvard in this moment, because what can happen to one can happen to all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Michael?
Thank you. So I think that there is a proven case that supports and demonstrates that public and private sector, when working closely together, can drive and propel economies across the country. And when you start to then pose threat or risk for nonprofit organizations that if they don't potentially comply with very specific things, there is a residual impact, frankly, as we think about not just that nonprofit, but we think about real people, real experiences at local and national levels. LISC employs LISC along with our affiliates employ about 900 people across this country. We support roughly 49 states and Puerto Rico with much of the work that we do. Last year alone, we deployed $3.2 billion invested in communities across this country to support housing, small businesses, and programs to drive local economies. Our housing program is an example of one where we've just recently had to spend a significant amount of time with the administration to highlight the importance of it. As you all heard me say earlier, we're a HUD provider, Section 4 provider. And our program, it's public knowledge, was suspended for a period of time. And the amount of time that we spent on Capitol Hill meeting with elected officials to explain and connect the program to real people and real experiences was important. Now, when you consider what I've just described, it wasn't just about LISC and a program that we had. There were a significant number of people across this entire country that were at the risk of not being able to get housing vouchers. You've heard me talk about roughly 1,400 community-based partners that we work with for various programs and initiatives, and specifically for the HUD program, more than 200 community-based partners. Those organizations that have employees working side by side with us to ensure that housing vouchers are made possible, affordable housing is made possible, even in rural communities where these communities may, in many cases, the jobs that are added there doing this kind of work is important to the local economy, but it also helps feed their overall ecosystem because you're, again, addressing a critical need in terms of housing. When the contract was terminated, we were faced with the issue that we knew our community-based partners there would be employees coming to work that day and being told, potentially being told, your job has been eliminated because the program has been terminated. And so we made the conscious decision to reach out and connect with all of our community-based partners and give them a 30-day notification. We carried that expense. That was more than $3.5 million of operating expense that we had to carry. It was a conscious decision that our leadership team and our board made. It's not something that was easy because, frankly, you don't just pull $3.5 million out of your pocket as a nonprofit organization easily. It means you've got to get out and you've got to raise more capital, particularly in the private sector, to get that support. But what we knew and understood was that real people, real experiences were being impacted as a result of this, and something had to be done. And so we ran that parallel work of being on the Hill, highlighting with elected officials the importance of this work, while at the same time trying to take care of communities. Successfully, through that advocacy work, we were able to get those contracts turned back on, and those employees that are doing this great work in terms of focus on affordable housing now are able to continue to do so. But that is just an example of the potential implications when we start to talk about 501c3s, nonprofit organizations, and what could happen. It isn't just about that organization. It is about communities at every level across our nation and the potential impact in terms of jobs, health and wellness, and our overall economic ecosystem.
Thank you. Nicole, you biting at I see you jumping out of your seat again.
Well, no.
And then we're going to go to Jeremy and questions from the audience next.
All right, so I just have to shine a light for a moment on the elephant in the room. At least it's an elephant for me. I don't know how anybody else is thinking about it, but there's this tension around, Kelly, the good point you raised about what happens when you affect funding for nonprofits. And Michael, the story that you just told about, what happens across communities, because we need a healthy nonprofit sector. But I do want to just draw to the forefront this tension around the number of nonprofits. Is going to be wildly unpopular. The number of nonprofits that exist in our 7-county footprints. This is Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, Washtenaw, St. Clair, Monroe, and Livingston. There are not fewer than 26,500 nonprofits in that 7-county footprint. Now, none of us wants to be in the business, cannot be in the business, will not be in the business of deciding winners and losers, as my friend Dave Egner often says. Certainly, some of, not all of, but some of those 26,500 are Kelly's clients. All of them may do good work, I don't know. But this question about efficiency, we have got to ask ourselves, is that is the model that we're forcing nonprofits into? And by that I mean, if you look at their back office, they all got to have a back office. They've all got to have, a CFO or some sort of accounting finance person and an IT person and an ops person, and they have to have all the infrastructure. And there are many nonprofits I know who have figured out how to share services. But we know, sitting on this stage and in this room, that all our nonprofits, they're not going to make it. And so our opportunity is to think about what would it take to give them the resources, the technical assistance that they need to make their own decisions so that they can move forward into whatever path they choose for themselves with dignity, whether that is, we've looked at our cash flow and we know we can make it work for 12 months, and we know that we've got some corporate sponsors who are going to stand behind us, and we're going to be fine because what we deliver in this community is unique. It's a unique value proposition that residents need. Great, go forth and do. If merging with somebody else or partnering with somebody else or sunsetting or whatever the right choice is for you, we have to think about as a community resourcing our nonprofits to be able to make smart, informed, data-based decisions about that. Because in that sense, efficiency is important, and it's the only way that any of our nonprofits are going to be effective.
Thank you. Do we have questions from the audience? Jeremy. Oh, Jason. Good morning.
Check. How about this one? There we go. Let me get right to it because I know we're running out of time. Terry Weems.
Thank you. I think we all have a reason to be concerned, and I'm interested in what we do when we leave here. And I think Nicole Sherrard-Freeman kind of touched on it a little bit as maybe something that we should start thinking about when we leave here. I lead Detroit at Work, and I had the privilege of working with Nicole, and I think she really prepared our organization for this moment. by helping us to rely less on federal funding, by helping us learn how to pivot. I'm really interested in understanding from you, what advice do you have for organizations going forward in navigating through changes in federal funding and advocacy strategies for grassroots and small organizations?
Somebody want to jump on? David, you want to jump on that?
Sure. Call Kelly Kuhn.
It's too easy, Dave.
So it's, gosh, I wish there were a simple answer, and I agree with Nicole's premise with a couple of nuances, right? We are in a free market system, and to assume the nonprofit sector can be rolled up as opposed to the natural order of how it plays out. For example, if I'm in a neighborhood that has a terrible literacy rate and there aren't any literacy programs that are in my neighborhood, you're damn right I'm going to start a nonprofit. I'm going to try to take care of that. I think the issue becomes, how do we create opportunities to discuss what we value as communities, where nonprofits should deliver those issues, and then nonprofits to see themselves as part of that solution. The reason I seriously say call Kelly Kuhn is we have an unbelievable infrastructure in Michigan that doesn't exist anywhere else in the country. I saw Kyle Caldwell here from Council of Michigan Foundations. We have the Michigan and Nonprofit Associations. We have a number of nonprofit support organizations. Grand Valley State University has a School of Philanthropy. That infrastructure has got to be activated. And the first thing I would be doing as a grassroots nonprofit is calling and saying, where can I go and who else can I talk to?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just,
please go ahead.
Just a couple other things. I know it's obvious. In this moment right now, elevating the story of the impact of the work is absolutely critical. Cannot emphasize enough the importance of inviting legislators into your work, inviting them to see your work in action, activating your volunteer base, activating your board members, looking at all of the multiple layers by which you connect to people, sponsors of your work. They need to be equipped with your story. We actually need to continue to make the circle of who talks about the great work of nonprofits larger and larger, and talk about the interconnectedness. So how does the impact to your organization, feed out into partnerships and relationships that you have? I mean, that's like literally in this moment the best advice that we can give. And then also collaborate. Make sure that you're elevating that voice with other organizations who have like missions like yours. Definitely coming on to the work of the Michigan Nonprofit Association, because we're monitoring that for all 501c3s, not just one. And it really is only a matter of time before things start to move from one subsector to another to another. So as we're watching what's happening in immigration and education and all of those others, it is going to trickle across. So we're watching how, what are the timetables of things that are happening before something is said and something is actual action happening. Those are all things that we should be doing in this moment. So that's what I would encourage.
Yeah. So I'll answer this question from two lenses. One of having spent 30 years of my career in financial services. I started at a bank which was called First Federal of Michigan. My office was 1001 Woodward Avenue, so it's incredible to see what has happened now. But I'll also answer the question from the lens of leading a national nonprofit organization. This is a moment in time where I think every nonprofit organization must be galvanizing. They must be pulling their board together and their leadership team, looking at their operating model and their strategic plan. The information that I have from the years of financing, what I've typically seen is that many nonprofits are asset rich and cash poor. They are largely dependent upon their programs that they may be running, and in many cases at the federal level, depending on those dollars. And the challenge that they're faced with is the flow, the period of time that it takes to get reimbursed for the work that has been done while still covering your operating costs at that same time. And in many cases, those nonprofits haven't been able to qualify for loans or other things. It's very difficult just for them to be able to cover their operations. And so as you start to then think about your future, there's a tremendous inflection point for us to then do a bit of what Nicole has touched on, is look at ways to collaborate large and small nonprofits for partnerships. I was meeting with a relatively large, a very strong nonprofit that is actually not that large, but has been around for a lot of years, and the work that they do is tremendous. I was with the CEO of the organization and their chairperson, and the question I raised at the end is, how can I help you? How can Liz partner with you? And the organization wasn't clear on their ask at the time, in part because the first ask was, well, can you give us some money? And it was like, well, we're a nonprofit too. We're all looking for the same thing. But where I was able to pivot the conversation is to talk about secondments. So sharing services and talent across the organization opened up several different ideas of how, through partnering with them, they could be in a much stronger and better position to operate, but it wasn't obvious for them or on the table. And so what I would invite every nonprofit that's out there doing amazing work is, now is the time to galvanize, really work very closely together and start thinking about, how do you share some of the resources, talents, and tools that you have in a way to effectuate more impact, local and national.
Thank you. Jason?
Yes, over here with the next question.
My question, and you guys have touched about cash flow and all these wonderful things. How does this region prepare for the inevitable loss of federal funding that impacts public transportation, housing, and schools? And I say inevitable, if anybody has read Project 25, this is consistent with what is in there. And so there's a lot of things that the federal government has been saying that it has done historically for the last however many thousand years, that now they're going to push to the local governments, state governments, to pay for. So the question is how do we prepare for that inevitability that's going to happen within the next 3 years so that we don't grind to a halt?
Thank you, Dwight.
Don, Nicole, one of you want to?
Well, look, first off, we have to, I'm going to build off of something that Dave said around efficiency. We have to be clear about what it is that we're talking about. Some of the folks in Washington are saying that we need more efficiency because government is so inefficient. Look at our deficit. Our deficit is mainly entitlements. It's not the discretionary dollars that we're talking about today. It's mainly Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and also defense. You throw that in, that is the lion's share of our budget. Maybe you can add in some other parts of HHS. When the discretionary dollars that we're talking about, including transportation, workforce, et cetera, those dollars are a drop in the bucket. So we have to be communicating to the people in our community and to folks across the country so that we can clarify the falsehoods that I think are being spoken to. And unfortunately, Democrats are not particularly effective at communicating. We talk in depth and nuance and can talk policy, but we're not very clear at communicating a message that actually resonates with people. So I think that we have to start communicating with folks in our community so they can then lean on members of Congress and raise their voices so that the White House hears. I do think that states are going to have to play a major role in working together and galvanizing institutions. I don't know why Harvard hasn't already pulled together all of the universities, colleges, community colleges across the country, because that's just as we talked about, that's the first. They're the first ones through the gate, but it's going to come after everyone. So states are going to have to do this. Institutions of higher learning, yes, other nonprofits, tax-exempt organizations, you're going to have to band together to try and come up with ways to fight this. Congress has shirked its responsibility up until now. It is time for Congress to step up. Things like the tariffs, and the proposed budget, Congress doesn't have to agree with that. They gave the power to the president. So we can be effective. Maybe we won't get the White House to agree the things that we want, but we can certainly get Congress to start stepping up and being responsible adults.
I think there's two. Go ahead, you go, Nicole.
And let me make that answer now hyper-local. There is no easy answer to your question. I'm going to offer two things. The first is I'm going to tell you what philanthropy is doing. So I see my colleagues Angelique Howard Skillman. I'm pretty sure I saw Wendy Lewis Jackson sitting next to Latrice McClendon. So we have Kresge in the room. We have Knight in the room.
Got
I'm
Laura's
sure
over
I'm
here
missing
somewhere.
others.
Graneman.
Laura Graneman with Rocket. I'm sure I'm missing others. I'm not wearing my glasses.
They're on your head.
I know it.
All right.
It's my cool factor, man. Come on. So philanthropy has, under the leadership of people like Dave and Wendy, have convened 3 tables right now internally with foundation presidents. We are talking about housing, immigration, and education. I can't promise what's coming out of that, and we already know that philanthropy doesn't have enough money to close the gaps. That's important to tell your friends. Philanthropy doesn't have enough money to close the gaps. That's number one. And number two, quickly, is building on a point that you made, Michael. We cannot wait for anybody to bring us a solution. I'm so glad you asked the question. We can't wait for people to bring us solutions. The people in this room are the solution. Form the table, have the conversation, make the plan, and get it moving.
Right. Just adding to that a little bit, if we go to a block grant system, I'm not sure the state and the counties are prepared for what's coming. And I'm hopeful that they are, and if they're not, they're having conversations about that. Data's been scrubbed at a national level. All the data was taken down, it was put back up, it was scrubbed. We're going to have a hard time getting into that data to understand new distribution systems and educate the nonprofit sector on how to live in those systems. So we've got to get ahead of that curve. On the other end of that spectrum, it's a longer term play, but important. We got to start storytelling about the everyday impact of the things that are happening. If you're going to go after waste, do it with a scalpel. Doing it with a sledgehammer and breaking it and then trying to fix it later is going to cost more money. An example, USDA cuts. If I go to the Detroit Area Agency on Aging and I look at what is 23% of their budget's federal based, that's about $5 million. About $4 million of that is 1.6 million meals in Detroit, Hamtramck, Highland Park, and the Points that are going to be gone for seniors. Who is going to replace that 1.6 million meals, and what does that mean to the health of senior care? What does that mean to who's going to replace it? How do we raise that money? Can we raise that money? We got to start talking about that impact. Because seeing a hungry senior and watching a health deteriorate as a picture brings sobriety to this discussion in a way that nothing else will.
I just want to add to the question. I think it's really key, and I think my fellow panel members have talked about the importance of taking it down to the local level and at community. When you think about really the essence of the nonprofit sector, where we started, why we started, how we started, it was all in care for community. So in this moment, we should be thinking about the connecting role that nonprofits play in reminding us of that importance of caring for community. Nonprofits should be at decision-making tables, elevating the stories, talking about the impact. They know it better than anybody else because they know how to care for community because they are community. And you as board members, you as volunteers, and you as donors are all critical to that success. If that safety net is not there, then how do we care for community, period, people, right? In the end, that's really what it's about, is the care for community and the care for people. And I think that's really important that if we center that, I think solutions to Nicole's points will come, but I think we ground ourselves in that. And I think nonprofits are critical to being able to remind us of that.
Thank you. Hiram sent me a text at about 5 minutes to 9 saying, let's go to 9:05, and it's now 9:07. So, sure.
One more
Hiram, one more question.
Here's Diallo.
So much pressure. Thank everybody for being on stage. I appreciate your thought leadership and advice. And I want to also thank all the nonprofits who are here because, as Nicole said, Detroit does the impossible every day. So I think we should be optimistic about what we could collectively do together. Here's my question, talking about the elephant in the room. Nicole, you mentioned one, which was the need for nonprofits to be more efficient and to have collaborative partnerships. I think one of the questions that many nonprofits are curious about from philanthropy specifically, whether that's Community Foundation, whether that's Kresge, whether that's Gilman, et cetera, what are you all seeing from your donors and from your supporters as they are the first part of the flow of income to you, which then goes out into the communities in which you serve? Are you seeing a reticence for giving? Are you seeing a hesitancy, or are you seeing an optimism saying, hey, listen, we want to come in and we want to play a big part in solving this solution?
Sure, I'm happy to start with that, and then I don't know if you want to weigh in here. What we're seeing with our donors are, fundamentally, their interest in and fervor around being supportive of community. Fundamentally, that hasn't changed, but they're being cautious. And I have there's no question in my mind they'll continue to be cautious. And if we're honest about the math of all this, people give when they have the discretionary income to do so. When we think about the broader impacts of the economic, just the sea change in economic policy, if that's what we want to call what's happening right now, but certainly the way economics are playing out on the ground, the more that changes, the more unstable that becomes, the more question there is in the mind of a person who's about to write a charitable check on whether or not their revenue or their profit, whatever the source of their generosity is at risk, the more cautious they'll be.
Yeah, I'll echo part of what's been said here and add that I think for what we're seeing is that for many of our foundations, community partners, and donors, they're also being very cautious regarding the executive orders that have been issued. Because part of what we're hearing them say is they expect a level of visibility and spotlight on their organizations, and they want to be careful about the next steps as they try to avoid being caught up in any political landmines. There's also a group of donors and partners that are frankly saying, we want to stay true to our commitment and the work that we're doing, and we want to align with nonprofit partners that are doing that as well. And when you talk about some of the issues like housing is a global issue, certainly is at every level, national and local. It's hard to say that, I challenge you to find a place where you'd say in a city or state, housing isn't important. And so that's one that, frankly, as we continue to work with our partners on the issue, again, connecting it back to real people, real experiences, staying clear from some of the political issues and focused on here's how housing can drive local economies and certainly support the communities. And when you're talking to elected officials, connecting it to their constituent base as well, being a very important part of the conversation that's there. It is a challenge, and I think that as we continue to navigate through these these times that are very different from what we've seen historically, we're going to have to continue to drive our message around mission, value, and impact in order for our funders and partners to stay closely connected with us.
I'll just add one thing. Again, going back to nonprofits, they are not afforded the luxury right now to decide whether they will or will not serve individuals. They will continue to do that. They will show up every day, regardless of whether they have resources or not resources. These are determined individuals. They are problem solvers. These needs are deep. And so I'm mindful in this moment that while we're still, talking about whether we'll, invest or not, nonprofits are going to be there to do the work. Without a doubt. They've demonstrated this time and time again. The Great Recession, the pandemic, just two more recent examples to point to. And so I'm really mindful that in this moment, it's absolutely critical that resources are there to continue to support, especially if the expectation is that we will continue to meet the need. And if the need gets greater, we're going to need to rally together and bring a lot of things and partnerships and collaborations and resources to address those needs. But I'm really mindful that in this moment, because it's always, trying to end on a positive note, nonprofits are going to show up because they will continue to show up every day. So be mindful about what that means in your involvement, right? Whether that's board leadership, whether that's volunteerism, whether that is contributions, it's all going to be needed, and they're going to be there, without a doubt. I have no doubt that our leaders will be there.
David, you want to close this out?
How could I beat that? That's right, nonprofits will show up. I think if there's in my mind, we're at a major reset point, as you were describing at the beginning, Dennis. The challenge is that we have people that don't understand the nuance, the complexity of the society we're living in, and they feel left behind. And some of the behavior you're seeing that is soundbite driven, the cheering on of some of the stuff that isn't helping our country and society, is being driven because they're left behind. I believe that as we weather this storm, it'll be this sector that bring them along, that fill the needs, that create a different level of understanding, and I do think we'll reset. I think that the future is bright. I think that the current situation is daunting, and I think it's the nonprofits in this room that'll bridge that gap.
Thank you.
Hey, we're back here post-game. Pancakes and Politics. I'm Jason Colthorpe, and I'm joined by Wendy Jackson with the Kresge Foundation as our first guest this morning. And as someone with a nonprofit, a 501c3, what were your impressions of this discussion today?
Well, good morning, and thanks for having me. And I'm really excited to be in the room and hear this really critical discussion.
It really was.
For the region and for so many communities in Southeast Michigan. My big takeaways were collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. Yeah. And I know what's going on in D.C. and the political news, the financial news has so many of us concerned. But in this room today, I hope people heard resolve through collaboration, through partnership, but also just together as the nonprofit community, but also in collaboration with the business community, the faith-based community. And because this news and these cuts coming down to local communities will impact everyone. People will feel it first. Yeah. With their children.
And it's hard that you can't keep politics out of a discussion like this. But have you seen some of the things that were talked about today where the need is obviously getting greater, more people, and we know that nonprofits, I think the stat I heard was 1 of 10 people are employed. Their job depends on a nonprofit. That, combined with the services they provide, means people are going to feel this.
Yeah, I think everyone needs to kind of recognize what this sector means to them and how it impacts their life, their daily life. Mm-hmm. So in their child's education, I was in a meeting yesterday, for example, with these cuts and the conversation about ending Head Start, for example. If they do that, on June 12th, you will hear that thousands of children in our region will no longer have early childhood education services. That's $45 million that will just vanish from our community on June 12th. So that's one example. I think people will feel it in their health. 10% of all births are paid for by Medicaid in our hospital systems. Hospital systems will be feeling this. They'll feel it at the grocery store. So this is not just news in a far-off place. This is going to impact day-to-day lives of all of us.
I would hope that, I know they've discussed when it comes to education cuts, not to mention special needs curriculums and programs that help. For example, kids that are speech delayed, they get paid for through the county. But I think they hope to keep funding that, but in a roundabout way. I think that's why people are worried. Is that money still going to make it to the state and to those levels? When we talk about things like other jobs, which was part of the discussion as well, and it almost felt like it might speed up the automation, AI. People worry about AI taking jobs, and without people to do certain jobs, that might be something else to worry about.
Yeah, definitely. I think just understanding how this conversation today that occurred around tariffs and the impact on our region and the economic development, the workforce development needs that we're going to have as a community. And I loved what was said on the panel about we can't operate in extremes. And we have to figure out what's the pathway forward so that we continue to have folks that are employed and employed in sectors that are economically healthy, but will also propel our region to the future, whether it's jobs in, EVs, electric vehicles, water resources. What are the jobs that are going to be needed in the future, and how do we as a community get prepared for those?
If you had to point to it when we talk about losing nonprofits because they just can't keep up. We heard about the numbers. Many of these are very small. If you had to guess, with tariffs and budget cuts and a lack of funding now rising and need growing, how many do you think are actually going to not be able to make it, go out of business?
I do not know. But I think what Kelly said at the end of this panel was really important.
Rise up.
That nonprofits, particularly, these are people who are doing mission-driven work, and they will find a way. And they will find a way, and their organizations will find a way, whether it's through greater collaboration. We heard about shared services today. There are so many different ways. It won't look the same. I do know that.
Right.
But I don't want to say that of the 26,000 nonprofits there are in the region, this is how many will be able to make it. I think we're just going to see different configurations of getting the work done for our communities.
Said, these are folks that find a way.
Right.
Wendy Jackson from Kresge Foundation, thanks so much for being here this morning.
Thank you.
It's great to meet you and talk to you. We're coming right back with the post-game show here on Local 4 Plus. It's Pancakes and Politics. We're back here on Local 4 Plus with Kelly Kuhn, who is the president and CEO of the Michigan Nonprofit Association, which when we started, I figured that would dominate the conversation, but boy, did this kind of branch all out into a lot of different things. What was your big takeaway?
I think my big takeaway was just really the understanding of the importance of storytelling for nonprofits, in particular out of community. I think there was a lot of information sharing around kind of what were going to be the economic impacts in community. And, for the Michigan Nonprofit Association, we're going to elevate that through the work of nonprofits. So I think there's a lot of interest and support. I took that away, and just the need for us to be thinking about collaboration and working together a little differently.
I liked what you said at the end, and I think it resonated with a lot of people in the room, which was, it doesn't matter what happens, maybe the system is broken or gets broken or the greater need, but people rise up. Nonprofits rise up and they meet the need. That said, do you still worry about, because you brought some of these statistics on how little or how the budgets of some of these nonprofits are small, do you worry that some of them won't survive?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of focus right now on compliance in particular for nonprofits, and while we've always been a sector that is kind of self-regulated, if rules of engagement change to where compliance becomes an issue, I think that's going to be challenging for some of our nonprofits to get back into compliance, and so as a result, it may contract. contract, the sector may contract. I think people, our leaders, they're burned out.
Yeah.
They're stressed. And so I think they're going to be thinking a little bit more thoughtfully about legacy of their leadership and thinking about how and maybe ways in which nonprofits can continue to serve communities, and it may involve less nonprofits.
And it always seems that nonprofits find a way, like you said, rise up, to use that word, depending on whatever the crisis is, back in the early aughts or coming out of COVID.
Yeah.
They always seem to meet the challenge. What are you hearing from other nonprofits around the state about what they're already feeling in this current climate?
Yeah, so we definitely are hearing stories about not being able to access future resources. So while they might be able to be in payment management systems, in particular on the federal funds, and are drawing dollars down, sometimes those are taking longer to get to them. Some of them are very concerned about future distributions that will happen. We are starting to see where programs are closing, and we unfortunately have seen where some nonprofits are closing as well. So we do expect that there will probably be staff layoffs and other things. I think it's happening on a daily basis. It's just really impactful in this moment for them.
And I think it was, I want to say David who brought this up, but efficiency isn't the right metric. What did you take away from that point?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something nonprofits have always had to struggle with, providing all of the data and the supports around the efficiencies. And really, they just want to meet the need in community. We're built for that, right? We're problem solvers. Right. We're going to see a problem and we're just going to address the need. So I think effectiveness was definitely the way to go, but it's an understanding about what does effectiveness mean, right? Did somebody get access to housing? Did children get access to meals, right? And do we care that we're caring for communities? So I think it's all about perspective, but I do think effectiveness and the work of nonprofits is definitely a metric that people should lean more into and be mindful of the efficiencies. I think the efficiencies will come actually naturally. I think this is a tremendous amount of change at once, and I think efficiencies will naturally be a result of this.
Did you leave the discussion, by the way, with a positive feeling?
I always leave with a positive feeling. Anytime I can talk about and elevate the work of nonprofits, I'm there. So yeah, I'm a realist, but I'm optimistic at the same time.
That's good stuff. Kelly, it was so nice to talk to you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And great discussion. It was very enlightening. It really was fascinating.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Kelly Kuhn, who is the president and CEO of the Michigan Nonprofit Association. More guests coming up on Local 4 Plus. Stay there. Back here for the post-game show here, Pancakes and Politics on Local 4 Plus. I'm Jason Colthorpe, and we're joined by David Egner, who's the president and CEO of the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation, part of the panel today. Thanks for being here, and appreciate the discussion. What was your big takeaway this morning?
Trying to find optimism in what is currently an anxiety-filled moment, and I think we found some of that, and really terrific discussion about how do you move forward when you, as a nonprofit, when you feel like maybe there is no future?
Right. Is it me, or does it feel like we had a big game of Monopoly there with things all over the board, and all of a sudden somebody just took the board and tossed it, and we're trying to put everything back?
Well, it'd be one thing if we were dealing with a changing economy. It'd be another thing if we were dealing with changing government funding. It would be a third thing if we were dealing with nonprofit defunding. We're dealing with all those simultaneously. Yeah. So how they interplay on each other, the domino effect of that, it's just too hard to understand at the moment.
You made an interesting point in there when you said to Dennis, you're using the wrong metric. Which was efficiency, how nonprofits need to be more efficient. Talk about that. Explain that again.
Well, if they were efficient, they'd be for-profits, right? There'd be a way to make a buck at it. Government, by its nature, is not efficient. We don't want waste. But if it were efficient, you could farm it out to a for-profit company and make things go. Same thing with nonprofits. Just think about the sector in this manner. Do you want efficient health care for your mother? Or do you want her to be effectively taken care of? I always think about K-12 education. I had a couple kids with special needs. Efficient education was of no interest to me. Effective education is a whole other thing. And as I mentioned on the panel, Reverend Anthony wasn't here, so efficient church was something I was not afraid to mention. Had he been here, I wouldn't have mentioned that.
Right. By the way, since you're I can't help but ask with the foundation, are you excited about the way the riverfront is shaping up and the park?
The riverfront is one of Detroit's greatest success stories. I mean, the bridge to bridge will be completed here in time. Our 22-acre named park, which has many, many other donors, is going to be an international destination. It's an amazing park.
It looks
I can't
exciting.
wait to open it up in October.
Yeah, I think we keep talking about it, and the way it's connecting that whole area looks very exciting. Last thing here, like you said, we finished on a positive note here when we talk about nonprofits and meeting the need. No matter what the system ends up being, if it's broken or reset, it feels like nonprofits are going to rise up and meet the need no matter what it is.
I think they'll rise up and meet the need, but I think we have to recognize two things. Nonprofits aren't a monolith. So you have healthcare and universities that are sophisticated with many resources, and about half those nonprofits that were mentioned this morning are unstaffed, grassroots-based organizations.
So they're very small.
They're very small.
It's a small margin.
The ones in the middle are the ones to watch. My sense is there's going to be a contraction of up to 20% of those in the middle. Because they won't be able to survive the cuts. They'll have to retool, and they'll have to each one ask the question, what do I value, what do I give of value to the community, and how do I best pass that on or extend it? And it's going to be a very difficult time for the next couple of years.
And then we get into those real stories that I believe it was you that mentioned, where do meals for seniors, for example, come from when we lose millions of dollars and millions of meals?
It's the unintended consequences of trying to make cuts with a sledgehammer instead of a scalpel.
Yeah.
The USDA cuts included $4 million to the Detroit AAA, Area Agency on Aging, that amount to 1.6 million meals to seniors.
Yeah.
How do we replace those? We will. We'll find a way. The nonprofits will step in. It'll happen. But I also have this picture of many hungry seniors that get sicker, die sooner, and become far more expensive when you look at Medicaid and issues that we'll have to face as a society.
Yeah. Well, we're certainly going to be watching and hoping, and also on our side, we'll be reporting those. Hopefully not as dire as it ends up, could end up being. David, thanks so much.
Thank you, Jason.
Appreciate it. David
Appreciate
Egner,
it.
who is the president of the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation. More Pancakes in Politics to come here on Local 4 Plus. Stay with us. And we're back. Obviously, Don Graves and I, we're just chatting. Can't help but do that. Don Graves is the former Deputy Secretary of Commerce in the Biden administration and now a fellow with the Georgetown Institute of Politics and Public Service. Thanks so much for being here.
Jason, thank you.
I ask everybody this on these days. When you walk away from a discussion like that, which started as this kind of hyper-focus, and we covered a lot of ground, what do you take away from that?
I'm optimistic.
I've heard that from several so far.
No, it's because of these types of conversations where people come in with not a political agenda, but with an agenda of focusing on the community, focusing on ways that we make sure that the local and regional economy is supported, and that people are focused on as sort of the core of the work that we do as a community.
And it's hard to keep politics out of a conversation like that, obviously, because of kind of the impetus of where it all comes from. But talk to me about, you made a good point, and it was kind of the end of a long point, but recap it for me on how, unfortunately, nonprofits and others who depend on the government really can't depend on the federal government as a partner anymore. And maybe permanently going forward, I believe you said.
Well, I think the current administration is rewriting the rules, changing our systems in a way that we've never seen in our lifetimes. And so communities can expect that the federal government, through its grants, through its expenditures, are going to be supported in the ways that they had been in the past. As we've seen, the president and his team are downsizing the agencies. They're cutting off programs, cutting off resources. So it's really incumbent upon folks in the community, the business community, nonprofits, the local and state governments, to work together to step in where the federal government is not stepping in right now, because it seems to me, at least for the next 3.5 years, that's going to be the case.
And I think the conclusion I drew from that point that you made was kind of, I would say most, well, at the very least, half of the country would agree they don't want, that you should use a scalpel, not a sledgehammer, to make cuts like this. But it might end up, some of them might prove to be effective, and like you said, going forward, don't count on that aid or those grants coming back.
I think that's right. Everything is being remade. It's really a revolution in the way that our government operates. And it actually may be time for those of us who believe that government is crucial as a partner and to deliver in ways that the private markets can't, for us to rethink the way that government operates. Maybe it's time to say the things that we believed in, the systems that we had before, well, if they're being eliminated or deconstructed, maybe we don't try to build them back the way that they were, but build them to a new way that actually delivers more effectively to the American people.
Yeah, I thought that was a fascinating point. And the other part of this that I think was kind of inadvertent, but people worry about AI taking jobs. Could we have seen the ramp up of this when we talk about immigration policy, removing people from the country that do a lot of jobs that regular Americans don't want to do? We've known that for a while, but also by companies unable to move back to the United States like the president wants, you're also forcing the hand of automation, I feel like, in a lot of areas.
I think that's right. AI is going very, very fast, and frankly, we no longer have a federal government that's as interested in trying to provide protections and guardrails to ensure that all the downsides of AI aren't manifested.
Yeah.
So that means that companies are going to be moving fast and furious to implement more AI and drive it into all of their business practices. So I think that means that we're going to see some jobs eliminated, perhaps, and a lot of the manufacturing jobs that the president is talking about bringing back, because they tend to be lower skilled, they tend to be more monotonous type work, they will either be done by robots or there'll be some more automated systems as part of the overall production.
They would have to be, simply because I'm just using an example of someone I've talked to in my job who owns a business and imports. They use the example of towels that were made years ago that cost $12 when they were made in America. Now they're $4 and they're the exact same towels. The prices go up in that regard. So it seems like automation is the only way a company would be able to bring that back. Don, I did want to ask you a question that we didn't get to on the panel real quick. And it came from, well, I'm going to leave the name out because I have no clue on how to pronounce that. It says, when Mr. Graves talked about business working with other businesses in their community, how would we encourage that and what benefits would it provide either party or both sides of that relationship?
Well, Jason, it's clear to me that for a business, and I've been a business person myself, and I've worked in a large company, small companies, and when you talk to CEOs, they know exactly what their business can deliver and what it should not deliver, those things that are not core to its business. And so businesses that are working in a community should find ways to partner with other businesses to do the work that's not core to their business. And frankly, it will help them get better business opportunities. It may help them strengthen the community a little bit better. They'll also see a greater flow and attraction of workers. It's why Silicon Valley was so successful, is because companies there didn't say, oh, it's all proprietary, I'm not going to work with the business next door. No, these CEOs, these innovators were working with each other and said, right, well, my business is going to do this, but let me help you with your company and the projects that you're working on. And so we need more of that in the Detroit area and other parts of the country.
Rising tide raises all boats.
Absolutely.
Yeah, interesting. Don, thanks so much. Don Graves,
Jason,
everybody.
Thank you.
Great discussion today, and thanks for joining us afterwards.
Of course, thank you.
We're coming back for a little bit more here on Local 4 Plus. Stay there. Back here on Local 4 Plus. One more guest to get to, maybe the star of the panel, I would say. A lot of great points. Nicole A. Sherrard-Freeman, who's the president of the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan. I used this analogy earlier with someone, and I said, when we got into this, it almost feels like the current climate is, we're playing this game of Monopoly 3 hours in, and somebody grabbed the board and threw it in the air, and we're scrambling to put it. Where was this? This was, you had Park Place, this was here, and it feels like that's where everybody's at, trying to find their footing.
Yeah. I think that's right. I think that's right. That's a great analogy, and I'd add to that, and when all the pieces landed on the floor, we go, is this still Monopoly?
Right. Yeah. I also appreciated throughout the entire conversation you were pulling it back to hyper-local. When you look at where nonprofits are currently, where they're going, and the fact that I think it's positive that a lot of people think they'll rise up and meet the need. What do you see for the Metro Detroit area?
I see an unprecedented opportunity to rethink how we work together, to rethink our business models, to think about what hasn't been working well. I mean, if we're all honest about the challenges we're facing, we're solving for some of the same societal issues we were solving for 40, 50 years ago.
Really
and
are.
so solving for the same problems means one of two things. Either we are solving for the wrong problem, or we don't have enough resources. We know the resource issue is of issue. I'm not sure we've been asking the right questions and solving for the right problems in the right way.
I think you and Dennis were kind of in a little discussion there about that. If the system breaks or they break it on us, don't remake it to what it was. What do you want it to be? What do you need it to be? And move forward from there. And like you said, that kind of leads into that efficiency discussion that I believe David brought up, where efficiency is the wrong metric.
That's right. That's right. This is really an opportunity for us to get clear as a region, as nonprofits, philanthropy, business, faith-based organizations, individual residents, on what we want and what we need. And so often we find ourselves in the position of not really thinking through, what do I want for my community, and articulating that in ways that people can rally around. I think we have to get clear about our needs and frame those needs as questions that other sectors can respond to.
And it's easy to find the fear or the negativity in a moment like this, where you're worried about, can this nonprofit make it, that nonprofit make it. But when you focus on the positivity, you know that all those seniors need to find that meal somewhere. How's it going to happen? Who's going to rise up?
That's
Fair?
absolutely right. That's absolutely right. We do have to ask ourselves, though, do we need to rethink how nonprofits work together? So in areas where there are nonprofit deserts, or where there are deserts of service types, if there are communities where nobody's serving the hungry seniors, then, as Dave Egner said on stage, we got to figure out how to fix that. But do we need 60 organizations serving one community? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, this might end up helping. What do they say? You broke it, and it just comes back stronger.
That's right.
In a certain way. Nicole Sherrard-Freeman, we appreciate it. Thanks so much. Really enjoyed your discussion, by the way, and the points. And thanks for sticking around.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I only said it because they raised all the curtains in here, so that must mean they want us to wrap this thing up. Yeah,
that's a wrap.
Anyway, that is a wrap here on Local 4 Plus Pancakes and Politics. We'll see you again next month, right here in downtown Detroit.